What's going on, everybody? Jesse here, and in today's video we're just going to create some styling, some widgets here. You can see down here in the bottom left hand corner we're going to create 3 different widgets. We're going to create the crafting window, a category button, as well as some slot buttons that we're going to sit in here. So all this, there's no functionality hooked up to these yet. It's all just styling. Got it placed up here on our screen, and this is how it's going to look. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Today's episode and others just like it are brought to you by the patrons listed on the screen. If you'd like to support the channel and future development, then consider visiting my Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee page, where you can receive various benefits such as early access to my videos, project downloads, as well as personalized support. You may also want to consider joining the community by joining my Discord server, where you can receive help from me as well as the community. So come on over and be a part of the conversation. All right, so let's go ahead and create our user widget. So open up your content browser. I'm in the widget folder right here. So let's go ahead and we're going to create 3 different widget blueprints. So let's go user interface, widget blueprint, and of course a user widget. I'm going to call this one WBP_crafting window, and then let's just go ahead and duplicate this one, and this one we will call crafting slot, and then duplicate that one and we will call this one crafting category button. All right, let's go ahead and start in the crafting window. Open this up. So in here first, let's go ahead and expand our windows here. We need an overlay. So grab our overlay. We're going to drop it right here. That's going to be our top level layer. After the overlay, we're not going to change anything on the overlay, but let's go ahead and add a size box. Drop that into the overlay. The overlay just allows us to have control over, allow us to have multiple children within there. And what I'm going to go ahead and do here, though, I'm actually going to go ahead and change this to desired on screen because, well, it's not going to be the full size of the screen. So on the size box, now let's go ahead and change the horizontal alignment and vertical alignment. And we're going to change them both to stretch. And then we're going to go ahead and change the width override and the height override. For this one, for right now, I want this to be a width of 700, and I'll explain this a little bit. This is just some math I did depending on the size of the slots we're going to have on the inside and the other buttons and all that good stuff. And right now I'm going to set it to a height of about 400 pixels. It works out about okay for now. May end up having to change these down the road, but this works out for us for now for prototyping. So that should be it for the size box. In the size box, let's go ahead and grab a border now. Drop that into the size box. Now size box can only have 1 child, but that's fine. We've got the border here. So this will be the 1 child, and the border itself can have 1 child. It's just kind of a hierarchy of things going on here, but it's just going to kind of step into each other. So with the border and over here in the tint, open that up, and we're actually going to just drop this all the way down to black. Select OK. Now let's go ahead and grab a vertical box. There it is right there. Drop it inside the border. And on this vertical box, we're going to change the padding all to 0. Now let's go ahead and grab some text. Drop it into that vertical box. Now this will be just kind of the definition of the top layer right here of what this window is. So just for the text, I'm going to change it to say something like crafting. Now for the padding, let's go ahead and drop this down. For the padding, I'm going to want a top of about 10 pixels and a bottom of about 15 pixels. For the horizontal alignment, I want it to be centered. And then for the vertical alignment, I actually want it to be on the bottom. This will make sense once we do the rest of the styling for this. And then the font size, let's go ahead and change the font size to 14. Drop it down just a little bit. Okay, and I think that's it for the text. So now let's go ahead and grab a horizontal box and then just drag that onto the vertical box. And it's going to put it underneath the text block right there. And inside this horizontal box, we need to add another vertical box. We actually need to add 3 vertical boxes. So I'm just going to drag and drop 3 of them on here. Okay. Now this first one, let's go ahead and change the name of this top one. I'm going to call this one categories. The second one, I'm just going to leave this as vertical box. The second one is actually just going to act as a spacer. I'll show you that in just a minute. I know we have spacers, but the way I'm doing this, the spacer actually doesn't work. So we're just going to put a vertical box in here and give it a specific percentage of a size. So this last one, I'm going to change the name of this to say items. This is the area in which all the items will go. And real quick, before we round this out, I'm going to take a wrap box, which is right here, and I'm going to drag it inside of the items. This is where all of our slots are going to go, is inside this wrap box. So I'm going to change its name to item box. So let's head back up here to the categories. And for the fill size, I'm going to change this, or from its size from auto, I'm going to change it to fill. And I want this to only take up about 25% of the entire width of the widget. So I'm going to go 0.25. And then I'm going to make sure that this is checked as is variable because we want access to this. Now down here on the vertical box I said we're going to use as a spacer, I'm going to set this to fill as well. And I'm going to set this, I only want this to be about 5%, so 0.05, okay? And that's still not going to look very good there, but that's how we want it. It'll move over into its spot here in just a second. So we go over to the items vertical box now. And then again, we're going to put the fill, but we're going to set the fill to 0.7. So all these add up to 1. So it's a whole 100% in here. You can change these numbers to exceed 100, but it's gonna take away from the others. So if you just make sure they all add up to 1 or 100% of the width of the screen, then it will be good. So here's our spacer. You can see that's just going to kind of give us a little bit of space in there. So now if we come down here to the item box, let's go ahead and make sure this is checked as is variable. And down here on the inner slot padding, this is just the X and the Y. So the X is horizontal, the Y is vertical. I want both of these to be 5. And this is just going to give us a little bit of padding in here between all of our cells. And that should do it for our crafting window at this time. We'll come back and do all the coding in a different episode. So let's go ahead and start on our next widget. All right, so now we're inside of our crafting category button here. So I'm going to go ahead and expand these again, common and panel. So we need an overlay, just like we did in the last one. Drop it in there on top. And this overlay is just the main container. So we're not going to do anything to this. Actually, the main container usually have very little options that you can actually change on your primary container. Now I'm going to grab a size box. I'm going to drop that down here onto the overlay. Now for our size box, select that. And I'm going to change the width of this, width override, and the height override. And I'm going to change the width to about 175 pixels, and the height I'm going to change to about 32. Again, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change this to desired on screen, so that way we only get the size of the button as it appears on the screen. And then inside the size box, I'm going to go ahead and grab a border, drop it into the size box. For this border, make sure that the padding is at 0, and we're going to set its tint alpha 0. Now, the reason why we're putting this border in here, we could probably go along and not have the border in here. This initially isn't going to be seen, but we could turn this into a variable and have access to it elsewhere, so we can dynamically change the border color, the background color of this. We're going to handle it a little bit different. We're going to do some styling on the button that we're going to insert here in just a second, but that just kind of gives it an option there to be able to do that. So I put the border in here for there. It's not a big deal if we don't ever end up using it. It's ultimately just going to be a container for us. So now with that, let's go ahead and grab a button. I'm going to drop it here inside the border. And for this one, I'm going to name this button to be category button, and then it should default to is variable. With that selected, let's go ahead and set the padding. We're going to set padding to 0 all the way around. We don't want any padding on it. Then we're going to come down here to the normal tint alpha. Let's open up the style here. We got normal, hovered, pressed, and actually disabled. We're going to do some work in here in disabled as well. So over here in the style for the normal, I'm going to go ahead and open up the tint, and I'm just going to choose some sort of orangish color in here. I'm going to make this kind of a darker color, and I've actually already got a color here. I'm just going to select this in here, select OK. So with this color now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it up here and I'm going to drag it into here. Actually, we want the alpha all the way up. Let me delete this one, make sure the alpha is turned all the way up. Then I'm going to take that and drag it up in here. So now we got the full color, and then I'm going to turn the alpha all the way down to 0. We're going to need this color later, so that's why I'm saving it up here in the box. So I'm going to come down here to the tint of the hovered button, and on this I'm going to select the same color, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw the hue up just a little bit. I'm actually probably going to change it to a little bit more of an orange, probably right about into there, I think is good. So I'm going to save this color as well, put this up here. The alpha can stay whole, so go ahead and hit OK. And then for the pressed, we're going to make it essentially the same thing here on the tint color. I'm going to do the last one we just did for the hovered. I'm going to select that, but I'm actually going to go make it a decent amount lighter so that when we push on it, it's definitely noticeable that it's different. And then just select OK. Make sure to come up here and take it and drag it in here. So now we've got the 3 states of the button: normal, hovered, and pressed. Select OK. And then for the disabled, we're going to come to the tint, and we're not going to have a special color for this. I'm just going to set it here as the default with this and alpha all the way down to 0. We're going to end up setting all these dynamically in the code a little bit later, but for now, these settings should all be fine. Make sure we come down here to is focusable, and we want to set this to false. We don't want this focusable. Make sure you save it. Now let's go ahead and grab some text, and we're going to drop it on top of the button, and this will represent what actually goes into the button. So with this selected, I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to give this a text of, let's just say food. Padding, I'm going to turn all the padding down to 0, and the font size we're going to set to 12. And that pretty much wraps it up for now for our category button. So let's go ahead and work on the crafting slot. All right, so now inside of our crafting slot widget, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab a size box. This is going to be our first container here. And in this size box, I'm going to set the minimum or the width override and the height override. I'm going to set this to 64. I want these buttons to be 64 pixels each. This adds up to the math that we're going to have in here a little bit later. We'll show you how the design of it looks out when it's all put together. So with that, that's all we're going to set in here for the size box for now. So head down, we're going to grab a button and put it down here inside of the size box. This button, I'm just going to change its name to craft button. I'm going to go over here to the tint. I'm going to set its alpha all the way down to 0. We don't want to be able to see this button. We're going to come down here to the normal padding right here. And we're going to change all this down to 0, as well as the pressed padding. We're going to set this all down to 0 as well. Make sure is focusable is false. We don't want this focusable. And that should do it for our button at this point. Come up here and we're going to change this as well, like we did with the others, desired on screen, so we can see how big exactly this is going to look. So here's our slot. We're going to kind of take from here what this is going to kind of mirror what our other inventory slot looks like, but obviously it's going to need different functionalities. So not too big of a deal. We'll set it up there, but generally speaking, the look is going to be about the same, so things are consistent. So if you have different budgets, inventory widgets for your buttons and for your inventory, then maybe you want to kind of model it after that, but just as far as the looks go, because some of this, as you could probably tell already, has changed from the previous one. So just get the looks to look about the same. All right, so let's grab a border now. I'm going to take the border, I'm going to drop it into the button, and this border, I'm going to change its name to be slot BG underscore border. Make sure it is a variable. We're going to come down here. We're going to change this padding all to 0. And we're going to change the alpha of the tint all the way down to 0. And then we're going to select its horizontal alignment to be fill, and then the vertical alignment also to fill, so it expands all the way through. And that should do it for the border. Let's go ahead and grab another overlay. We're going to drop it inside this border. And for this overlay, let's go ahead and get rid of all its padding, and then grab a scale box. There it is, scale box. Drop it into this overlay. Now, what the scale box does, we're going to have some text in here, and this is going to allow it to where no matter what text, because we're going to dynamically be putting text into here, it's going to size the text automatically. It's going to scale it to only fill this box based off of our initial font size. So you'll see how that goes here in just a minute. So we've got the scale box in here, and then inside the scale box, let's grab a text, drop it inside the scale box. For this text, I'm just going to change what it says here. I'm going to call it craftable item. So it is. You can already see that it sized itself down to the based on size of this. So if we go craftable item in this slot, hit enter, and there you go. You see it. So if we change the font to be a font size of 10, now if we just get rid of this extra text, so that's what a scale box does. So real quick, go back to the scale box. Make sure that your padding is set. I'm just going to go 2, 0. What that's going to do is it's going to give me a left and a right padding of 2. Give us a little bit of a cushion here on the side. And then on the horizontal alignment, I'm going to change this to center. And then on the vertical alignment, we're going to change this to bottom. We want our text to be at the bottom here. Now let's grab an image. And on this image, we want to drop it into the overlay. That's why we put an overlay in here, because an overlay can have multiple children, whereas in a border can only have one. All right, so we drop this in here. So our scale box is done. It's only got the text in there. With the image, I'm going to change its name to thumbnail. Make sure it is a variable. And its padding, I'm going to change its padding to be 0, 0, 5, 15. So it's going to give it a right padding of 5 and a bottom padding of 15. And excuse me, we do want this to be 5. We do want a left image here, or left padding here, 5, 0, 5, 15. So with that, now we want to change the vertical and the horizontal alignment both to be stretch. So that way it fills up the space in here. And then lastly, let's go ahead and add another text box. And we're going to add this again inside the overlay. And for the text, I'm just going to enter this to say 99. This is just going to represent how many items can be crafted. So when I craft this item, this is going to represent how many I can make for each crafting button click. So with that, I'm going to change the color to be green, just like we did with the other one. Select OK, and then make sure it is a variable. I'm going to change its name to craft amount. This one will be similar padding to the last one, except for this is the one that it should have been 0, 0, 5, 15. The horizontal alignment will be right, and then the vertical will be bottom, and its font size will be 6. There we go. Just kind of pushes it right in the corner for us. And there we go. That should do it for the crafting slot. So let's go ahead and head over to the crafting window, and let's just kind of see what this looks like when it's all put together. All right, now if you just want to see what it looks like here, so let's come over to the palette here on the left-hand side under user created. First, let's go ahead and grab a crafting category button. Drag and drop that onto the categories vertical box right there. And if you get that where it showed up empty in here, make sure you compile everything. I don't think I had it compiled, but also I noticed over here in the category button, I'm going to head back over here. This text block, we actually do want this to be a variable. So make sure that is selected there. And I'm just going to name this category text, and then make sure you compile it. And then let's head back over to the crafting window. So now we can let's just take 2 of these and put them in there. Another one on top of the categories. So now we got our category buttons right there. So now let's grab the crafting slot, drag it and put it down here into the item box, not the item vertical box, but right here into this one. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this. So Control D, 4, 5, 6, 7. So with my math, this is how it comes out. We got a little bit of space in here. At the end, it gives us a little bit of padding. So then if we add another one, it's going to automatically wrap it around for us. So with the sizes I chose, this is how everything will look when it's laid out, which I don't think is too bad. It's got a little bit of break in between, or a little bit of padding in between each button here, 5 pixels all the way around. The edge has a little bit right here. And then these are all going to, everything in here is going to be dynamically generated, which will be in the upcoming episodes. But this just kind of gives you an idea of how it's going to look. So with 400 pixels in this size, obviously you can get a little bit bigger right here, but chances are likely you're not going to have that many items, because we could probably get 7, there's 28. We could probably get 35 buttons in here before we run out of space in a 400 pixels. And if you've got that many items for one category, then you might need to think about having an extra category. Same thing with your food buttons right here, or with the category buttons here. You know, I mean, it depends on the depth of your game, but if you have to change some sizes, then change some sizes. But I think this particular size that we have here is going to be pretty manageable within the game itself. So before we delete these, you don't want to keep these in here. You want to delete these, because if you run it, when we have all our code in here, this is going to throw some errors for us. But let's head over to the primary HUD really quick. Let's just drop this into our primary HUD widget. So user created, come down here to the WBP crafting window, drop it on the canvas panel, and there it is. So we have it. Make sure we select size to content. Come over here. So we don't have anything in here right now. So I'm just going to drag this before we do any compiling. I'm going to come over here. You've probably already compiled, but before we do, I'm actually going to come down here and I'm going to set the anchor for it to the bottom right. And I'm going to set the position here to be 50. I want it to be 50 pixels off to the left. So let's zoom in. I've got a little bit of space in between these, so that's good. Maybe even do 50 pixels. So remember, this is 400 minus 450. That's probably too much. Minus 410. How's that look? Yeah, that looks about right. And the reason why I got 400 was because this widget is 400 pixels long. So got that in there. That's how that's going to look. Should line up. So now the reason why these things aren't in here, because I didn't compile the crafting window. So I'm going to come back in here and hit compile, come over here, and there we go. It filled in. So this is what it's going to look like on our screen. And we don't have any code hooked up, so this isn't going to throw any errors now. I'm just going to hit play, and there we go. That's how it's going to look on the screen. We're going to set some hover functionality here. We don't want any hover buttons, and we're going to set all that a little bit later. Same thing in here. We're going to to set the hovers on this. But if we open up the inventory, there we go. This is how it's going to look in here. If we come over here and open up this, we'll still have the crafting window here. So this is how it kind of fits in there. I think it looks pretty decent. So like I said, in the upcoming episodes, we're going to start putting down the programming for all this. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please go down, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe while you're down there liking it. Hit that notification button to be alerted anytime I upload a new video. Come over, join the Discord, be part of the conversation, be the community, and until the next one, peace.